So, what exactly did America just watch? I mean, the reaction from political circles, from the media, it wasn't about policy disagreement.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
The sources we're looking at, they're describing this thing, this national address, as and I'm quoting here, psychotic meltdown.
A psychotic meltdown and an unmitigated disaster. You just don't hear that kind of language, even in today's climate.
You really don't. And that language, meltdown, disaster, it wasn't just, some kind of standard political exaggeration. It was everywhere, instantly.
Right, which suggests the problem wasn't just the content, it was the delivery, the state of the speaker.
Exactly. And so for you listening to this, our whole mission here is to just clinically dissect this chaos. We're going to pull out the factual counterpoints, the actual data, and look at the bizarre priorities that led everyone to these extreme verdicts.
Yeah, we have to, because the sources are just saturated with specific quotes and precise data. This speech demands, maximum scrutiny to separate what was spectacle from what was actually substance.
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof, exactly. So we're digging into 4 key areas. First, that bizarre delivery that right off the bat made you question what was going on. Then, the avalanche of just easily provable lies.
And the economic revisionism. Big one.
Huge. Then, the complete disconnect from the reality of the American economy right now, especially on affordability. And finally, some of the most controversial, almost random policy announcements that just came out of nowhere.
We really do have to start with that perception check, because that feeling of cognitive doubt, it was there from the very first second. If you were on social media after the address.
Oh, I was.
Right. The conversation was not about trade policy. It was all about the performance. Terms like Adderall address were trending almost immediately.
And the consensus was just brutal. I mean, one source we read concluded that if the actual goal of the speech was to demonstrate cognitive impairments to the nation,
then he hit the jackpot.
He hit the jackpot. It was a performance that was just defined by instability.
And this wasn't just, comedians making jokes. We're talking about serious political figures watching this whole thing unfold. High-profile critics weren't reacting to the budget details. They were reacting to the perceived state of the speaker.
Governor Pritzker,
right. He directly agreed with a post online that just called the whole address weird shit.
And when you have established governors using language like weird shit to describe a national address, something truly unprecedented just happened.
It signals this deep instability, a disorientation from the very start. And that instability, it really set the stage for everything that came next. It made all the factual errors feel less like, simple mistakes.
And more like part of a larger narrative of just being completely detached from reality, which is how he was able to set up his foundational lie about the economy.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The performance instability. It wasn't just the pacing or the rambling. It started with the tech.
Yeah, our sources pointed that out. They called it the trademark Trump glitch right at the opening. A moment of technical confusion. He couldn't seem to settle in with the teleprompter or the stage.
And that set the tone for instability before he even said a single word about policy.
It did. And that little stumble at the start was so crucial because his entire speech was built on this one central idea. And instead of a strong start, he immediately launched into a core, provable economic fabrication.
The lie of origin. It's designed to completely reset the clock on who's accountable for the economy.
The premise was that he walked into a total disaster. He started with, "Good evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess." And he claimed he was fixing it.
And the key detail was the inflation claim.
Right. He said that when he took office, inflation was, and I quote, "the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country." That one claim is the entire foundation for him being this necessary economic savior.
And the counter-critique from the source material just absolutely shreds that narrative. I mean, for you, the listener, it's essential to get this context. He did not inherit a mess.
Not at all.
In fact, the major analyses we looked at argues that the speaker actually, quote, inherited an economy that was the envy of the world, and you drove it into the ground.
We should probably put some data behind that. He's trying to rewrite history here. When he took office, the economy had actually recovered quite a bit from the last recession. We had sustained job growth. The stock market was at historic highs.
And crucially, on inflation, while it was present, it was absolutely nowhere near a historical crisis level.
So when she says worst in 48 years, what is he even talking about?
He's talking about the current high inflation that happened after his policies were in place. At the moment he inherited the economy, the inflation rates were, relatively stable compared to the huge spikes we saw in the post-pandemic era that he's now presiding over.
So it's a calculated rhetorical move. He's trying to shift the timeline of blame.
Exactly. He's labeling the prior situation as the absolute worst in history, which is a massive exaggeration, just to dodge responsibility for the current economic instability.
It's not just denying what's happening now. He's inventing a past calamity that just didn't exist to the degree he described it. And now he's performing this rescue operation that, nobody is actually allowed to feel or measure.
And that theme, that he inherited a disaster, it immediately bled into foreign relations, which led to another really bizarre claim.
This is where it just becomes totally detached from any verifiable diplomatic reality. He said, "We had the worst trade deals ever made, and our country was laughed at from all over the world, but they're not laughing anymore."
Yeah, suggesting this massive global diplomatic triumph.
Right.
But the critical take here is really sharp, because it distinguishes between being respected and just being a cause for nervous concern. The rebuttal from the source is just blunt. No, actually, people are horrified. Our enemies are laughing. What the hell are you even talking about?
What's so interesting there is the political calculus, the claim that they're not laughing anymore. It relies on the audience believing that fear or concern about American policy is the same as respect.
Right. If you impose erratic tariffs, threaten to pull out of alliances, yeah, countries might stop laughing, but it's because they're deeply worried about global instability or supply chain disruptions.
Yeah, or even war. But that is not diplomatic admiration. It's diplomatic horror.
It's the difference between being a stable, reliable global leader and being an unpredictable, dangerous actor. And the source has really emphasized that gap between the rhetoric and reality. The outcome wasn't renewed respect. It was, according to these sources, a mix of horror among allies and just amusement from adversaries.
So this foundational instability, both economic and international, it just set the stage for a massive strategic distraction. And that instability was followed almost immediately by a pivot. It felt like it was designed to distract people from the very economic realities we were just talking about.
Yeah, if the point of the address was to rally the country, he chose let's say, a strange focal point for the nation's biggest crisis.
He immediately shifted away from pocketbook issues
and pivoted right to the transgender distraction. He claimed, and this is a quote, "The biggest issue confronting this country right now is transgender for everybody under former President Biden."
He also threw in men playing in women's sports and law enforcement words being forbidden.
So let's just stop and think about the political calculation there. At a time when Americans are dealing with soaring grocery bills, high mortgage rates, insane housing costs.
Issues that affect literally 100% of his audience.
Right, daily. He picks a narrow, emotionally charged culture war issue and calls it the single most critical national threat.
It's a total reframing of national priorities. The sarcastic critique is, absolutely warranted here. Is this really what's keeping most Americans up at night? Or is it the cost of gas and food?
It's a deliberate, tactical misdirection. You use a narrow social issue to generate outrage so you can sidestep talking about the actual economic pain that most of your audience is feeling. Pain for which you are now directly accountable.
Right. It lets him offer a rhetorical solution, attacking forbidden words while completely avoiding any accountability for the economic environment. And that disconnect, it's just glaring. And it set up the next major lie about affordability.
The irony is just, it's so rich. He goes from saying the biggest issue is a culture war to then brazenly denying the existence of the very real economic pain that should have been the focus.
He said there is no affordability crisis, and he promised, "I am bringing those high prices down and bringing them down very fast."
And then he claimed, nobody can believe what's going on, referencing this massive, completely invisible progress.
That is pure gaslighting on a national stage. When you have, as we'll get into, over 70% of the public saying they're in financial discomfort because of inflation, and you tell them the crisis doesn't exist and prices are magically collapsing.
You strain credulity past the breaking point. It's impossible to reconcile the experience of shopping for groceries with that statement.
And here's where the absurdity creates this massive internal contradiction: the tariffs.
Yes. In the same breath he's denying the crisis, he's championing the very thing that drives up costs for consumers. He actually announced that tariffs are his favorite word.
His favorite word, and a driver of success, even though every critical analysis connects tariffs directly to surging inflation for American consumers.
We should probably explain the mechanics there for anyone listening. Tariffs are taxes. They're not paid by China or Mexico.
No.
They're paid by the American company that imports the goods. And that importer, facing higher costs, just passes those costs directly on to you, the consumer.
So this raises the obvious question. If tariffs are his favorite word, and he's using them widely, how can he possibly claim to be bringing high prices down very fast?
He can't. Economists from all over the spectrum agree that tariffs are a tax on the consumer. They lead to higher prices. They make the exact affordability crisis that he denies exists even worse.
The source material just highlights this contradiction perfectly. When a politician stands up and champions a policy that demonstrably increases the cost of everything from electronics to clothes, he is championing inflation.
It's a self-inflicted wound disguised as a strong policy, where the strength is just bombast and the policy is just failure.
It really forces you, the listener, to choose between his political rhetoric and the price you pay for a washing machine.
And then, amidst all this denial of the current crisis, he offered this incredibly vague promise for the future.
The empty housing promise, yeah. He promised to announce some of the most aggressive housing reform plans in American history sometime in the new year.
Or in 2 weeks.
Or in 2 weeks, right. Classic future pacing to distract from what's happening now.
And that vagueness is the key. The country is hurting now. Housing shortages, rent is skyrocketing. And you're deferring a major announcement to some arbitrary future date.
It just signals you're not prepared, or you're trying to use anticipation to mask the fact that you have no real plan. If the plans were so aggressive and historic, why not detail them in the national address itself?
It's a rhetorical strategy. You project competence without committing to any specific measurable policy that can be fact-checked today. It's the political equivalent of saying, trust me, I have a great plan for the crisis I just told you doesn't exist.
And this is where the script moves from, economic revisionism to claims that just defy the fundamental laws of mathematics.
Yeah, it's a numeric absurdity.
I'm talking about the drug prices claim. The sources we read identify this as maybe the most objectively false and most revealing moment in the whole speech.
It just reveals a profound lack of respect for the audience's basic intelligence. Because the claim is so instantly verifiable is just impossible.
So he claimed he negotiated directly with drug companies to slash prices on drugs and pharmaceuticals by as much as 400, 500, and even 600%.
Okay, stop right there. That is mathematically impossible. And we need to explain this really clearly. The percentage is the key.
Right.
If you decrease something by 100%, its price goes to zero. It's free.
So a 200% decrease would mean
A what?
the drug company is paying you the original price of the drug to take it?
Yes. So a 600% decrease means they're paying you 6 times the original cost just to take their medicine. It's an astronomical exaggeration that just completely disregards basic arithmetic.
The fact that he would even use a figure that absurd, it shows this profound confidence that the audience either won't notice or just won't care because the number sounds big.
But if the lie is that transparent, if a middle schooler with a calculator can debunk it, what's the political value in saying it?
That's a great question. What is the goal?
Well, it functions as a kind of hyper-rhetoric. It's designed to just overwhelm any critical analysis. If he'd said, 40 or 60%, that would be a substantial but debatable claim.
Sure, policy analysts could argue about it.
But 600%, it's instantly a fantasy. The political value is signaling this immense power. I am so powerful, I can defy math. And it makes smaller truthful claims seem insignificant. It just signals that the whole discussion is unmoored from reality.
And the source material uses this as evidence of his willingness to engage in just outright fraud. It labels the whole healthcare discussion a calculated deception.
Which brings us right to the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Because after the impossible drug claim, he immediately shifted blame for rising health costs.
A huge concern for millions of Americans. He asserted that steep increases in premiums are being demanded by the Democrats, and it's their fault.
And this is where the source material gets very direct, with that rhetorical line, we're not stupid, Donald.
So let's dissect the factual counterpoint here. Because the sources state unequivocally that the massive premium hikes he's talking about are a direct result of the refusal by his own party.
You and the MAGAs, as the source puts it.
To extend the expanded Affordable Care Act subsidies.
Let's define the mechanism. The ACA subsidies are tax credits. They're designed to lower the monthly premium costs for millions of people who buy insurance on the exchanges.
Right, and those subsidies were temporarily expanded, which made coverage much more affordable for a lot of families.
But when those expanded subsidies expire, or when they are intentionally blocked from being renewed by one party,
Right.
the financial burden falls directly back onto the consumer, overnight.
It's what analysts call the subsidy cliff. people suddenly face monthly bills that are hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars higher, it creates immense financial stress.
So the cost increase is an automatic, predictable consequence of not passing the subsidies.
So when he blames the Democrats for demanding the increases, he's just turning reality completely on its head.
He's pointing the finger at the party that's trying to provide financial relief, while his own party's legislative obstruction is the direct cause of the price spike. He creates the crisis, then blames his rival who wants to fix it.
The source material characterizes this combination, the impossible drug price claims, plus the blame shifting on the ACA, not as spin, but as outright fraud about everything.
It's a strategy of total informational warfare. The facts are irrelevant compared to the political game. He's forcing the audience to choose between their own rising premiums and his preferred story.
So moving on from that, the speech was also just peppered with these highly specific, but also sort of random policy announcements that felt completely detached from the core issue.
Right, and we have to talk about the strangest of these, the warrior dividend.
This was pure political theater. It felt like it was built around a symbolic, patriotic number, specifically designed for a viral moment.
Absolutely, a distraction from any kind of sustained, comprehensive policy solutions.
And the specifics were so detailed, which gives it this false sense of seriousness. He announced a special warrior dividend before Christmas, sending every single soldier $1,776.
And he specified this applies to over 1.45 million service members and was in honor of our nation's founding in 1776.
So let's talk about the symbolism versus the actual policy here. The critique from the sources immediately zeroes in on the priorities. Why this number? Why a symbolic one-time payment instead of focusing on long-term affordability or fixing healthcare for veterans?
Yeah, the source is just direct. Why don't you just make prices more affordable? It highlights the huge opportunity cost. A check for $1,776 is a powerful headline that connects to a patriotic date.
It's a fantastic soundbite.
But it does absolutely nothing to address the structural economic problems, like the high cost of housing near military bases or the rising cost of tuition for military spouses.
It's the difference between a gesture and actual governance. He gets to claim he supported the troops with this very specific, memorable, short-term act, and he avoids all the complex, expensive policy work required to genuinely improve their lives long-term.
Maximum emotional impact for minimal systemic effect.
And then we get to the complete fabrication about labor statistics. This one was wrapped in a heavy dose of nationalist identity politics.
Classic example of using a fabricated statistic to create a zero-sum political dynamic. It's intended to make sure that any bad economic news can be blamed on an outside group.
The claim, he said that in the year before my election, all net creation of jobs was going to foreign migrants.
All of it.
But since he took office, 100% of all net job creation has gone to American-born citizens.
That is a remarkable claim. Not just because it's factually incorrect. I mean, the labor statistics are way more complex than that. They don't show a clean 100% split.
No serious labor economist would ever endorse a statistic like that. The Bureau of Labor Statistics data is just far more nuanced.
But it's the motivation behind the lie that's important. The source material really nails the societal framing here. He uses this made-up statistic to frame the issue as the government serving one of two groups.
Either the productive, patriotic, hardworking American citizen,
or those who break the laws, cheat the system. It draws a clear line in the sand and turns economic policy into a battle. If the audience accepts that jobs were only going to foreign migrants before him, then the current rising unemployment, which we're about to get to, can be entirely blamed on something external.
Right. The blame is focused on immigration, not on his domestic economic policies. It's fear-mongering wrapped in a nationalist appeal.
And now we have to transition from the rhetoric of the speech to the cold, hard data that proves just how detached it was from the American experience. This is where the numbers really do speak louder than his claims.
He claimed nobody can believe what's going on, implying things are miraculously getting better. But if you look at the unemployment rate, the data shows movement in the unequivocally wrong direction.
Let's get into the specifics from the source's analysis. The unemployment rate has been climbing steadily this term. It was 4.0% in January.
Okay.
It rose to 4.2% by May, and the latest reading has it at 4.6%.
That jump from 4.0 to 4.6 in just a few months, that's significant in economic terms. That represents hundreds of thousands of people losing jobs or businesses pausing hiring.
Right. And the source notes this is the highest unemployment rate we've seen since 2021. This directly undermines any claim of miraculous progress.
And the unemployment rate is what they call a lagging indicator, right?
Exactly. It reflects economic weakness that has already happened in other sectors. So for him to claim economic strength while this crucial indicator is creeping up, it suggests he's either unaware of the data, which seems unlikely,
or he's actively lying about it. You can't have slowing job growth and rising unemployment and then tell the nation there's no affordability crisis.
But the data that's even more telling isn't just the official metrics, it's the sentiment gap. How do Americans actually feel about the economy?
And according to the source material, they feel profoundly negative.
This sentiment gap is the crucial measure of the disconnect. So let's look at the polling. When Americans are asked if the country's on the right track with inflation, only a staggering 20% of them agree.
20%. That means 4 out of 5 people, 80% of the public, believe the country is headed in the wrong direction on prices.
So when a leader says prices are collapsing and the crisis is over, 80% of his audience knows from their own grocery bill that he's living in a different reality. The speech just becomes delusional.
And the jobs metric?
Similarly dismal. After all that rhetoric about 100% of jobs going to American citizens, only 27% of Americans believe the country is on the right track regarding jobs.
So under 30% on both key economic metrics. That just highlights the massive disconnect. The speech existed in a bubble of self-congratulation that was completely removed from the lived experience of its viewers.
And that's why it failed so spectacularly. And this dissatisfaction has had a profound, measurable impact on his political standing. We have to look at the approval rating collapse.
The economy was supposed to be his defining strength.
It was, but that strength is completely gone. Let's review the decline. His economic net approval was at plus 6% in January, still in positive territory.
Okay, so he had some cushion.
But the decline since then has been precipitous. The latest Reuters Ipsos poll shows him at a stunning 25 points underwater. That's a net negative approval.
Wow, that's a 31-point swing into the negative in less than a year.
And it's largely driven by the affordability crisis he just denied exists.
That's disastrous for a leader whose entire brand was built on being the economy guy.
The conclusion from the data is stark. The economy, once his strength, is now a political anchor. This decline is leading to the worst approval rating he has had in his entire second term.
So the national address, which was supposed to reassure the nation and turn these trends around,
instead, it just doubled down on denying reality. It confirmed the chasm between his fictional world and the demonstrable decline in public confidence. It was the anti-reassurance speech.
So what does this all synthesize into? I think we have to use the political reactions because sometimes, high-level political satire gets closer to the truth than a dense policy analysis.
And Governor Newsom's commentary was a perfect, sarcastic condensation of the whole thing. He just captured the mood of exasperation perfectly.
It started with that minimalist reaction, which said so much about the lack of content. He just said, this could have been an email.
Right, meaning the actual substance was so thin, so vague, it didn't warrant a primetime national address that interrupted everyone's evening.
But then he followed it up with a much harsher satirical translation that really got to the heart of the critique we've been discussing.
Yeah, he suggested that all those words, the tariffs, the warrior dividend, the culture wars, were just an elaborate way of saying, and this is his quote,
F your healthcare and your grocery bills, get a third job, peasant.
And while that's obviously satirical and aggressive, it perfectly reflects the critique. By prioritizing all those other things while denying the affordability crisis, the speaker was essentially telling the average American their pain just doesn't matter.
And then, of course, the ultimate sarcasm, aimed right at the speaker's lifelong tendency for self-aggrandizement.
Many are saying that was a better speech than the Gettysburg Address.
Which brings us back to where we started. The chaotic performance itself, which really defined the content. We have to end with the source's ultimate synthesis of the event.
The overall assessment was that this primetime address wasn't a serious attempt to govern or communicate. It was merely the speaker struggling to read a psychotic script full of lies written by Stephen Miller about how great he is.
And that quote just encapsulates the total critique. It wasn't a national address about solving problems. It was a vanity project built on transparent lies, delivered by a speaker whose performance raised serious questions about his own capacity.
An exercise in self-praise, completely divorced from verifiable facts or public suffering. And this whole analysis shows you that when an address is so factually unmoored, and relies so heavily on these bizarre, easily verifiable lies, like this 600% drug price claim.
Or the 100% job creation fantasy.
Right. It signals a profound shift in political strategy.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. When political leadership relies on making claims that defy basic mathematics and easily accessible economic data, what does that signal about what they assume about the intelligence of the audience? Do they just believe you can't or won't check the numbers?
And more critically, what is this demand of critical thinkers like you moving forward? What happens to democracy, to shared governance, when the baseline of shared verifiable facts just vanishes completely? When leaders operate entirely inside a self-serving narrative bubble that denies the reality of 80% of the population? That complete vanishing of shared facts, that is the real unmitigated disaster this address revealed.